Good evening to everyone joining us here today. Myself, Pritali Modu. On behalf of Modupreneur Academy, I am truly delighted to welcome you to tonight's enlightening webinar. Today's deliberation, the making of Kashmir Shaivism in the social intellectual landscape of early Kashmir. Now, I would like to introduce about our today's eminent speaker, Dr. Haroon Rashid. Dr. Rashid is an early career historian and postdoctoral fellow, School of Arts and Aesthetics, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. Dr. Rashid did his MA in History from University of Kashmir and emerged as gold medalist. And he did his PhD from same university on the intellectual history of early Kashmir with thesis on Kashmir Shaivism. He published wide range of articles in Sage, Routledge, ICHR, IGNCA, and Indian Journal of Archaeology. He has also presented his research in conferences like Dublin City University and University of Oxford. Now without any further delay, I am going to invite Dr. Rashid to take the virtual stage. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this wonderful introduction. Am I audible to everyone here?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you so much to Dr. Gargi and the entire team of Modoctrainer Academy for inviting me for this wonderful series which you are organizing since, I think, many days. And it is really an honor for me to speak about the emergence of Kashmir Shaivism in the intellectual landscape of early Kashmir, which is actually to talk about the emergence of this particular tradition from a historical perspective. So I would not like to take a lot of time. I would try to simplify it and to do it in a reasonable amount of time. So without the further delays, so I'll just would like to start with this thing that when we talk about the region of Kashmir, since the early times, when we use the term early times, it means both an ancient and the early medieval period. Kashmir has been a very vibrant space where the people of different cultures, different civilizations, different ideologies used to meet and engage in a very constructive dialogue in the field of be it religion or the poetry, aesthetics, history, etc. Now, when the people of different civilizations and the places used to come to this particular space of Kashmir, so they used to exchange their ideas, their traits of those spaces where they come from. And with the passage of time, Kashmir was not only a receptive space of all these things, but gradually Kashmir emerged such an intellectual place that it began to contribute to those civilizations, to those cultures, which has contributed to its development. Now, I'll give you a couple of examples which are very important. The first example I will like to give that of the aesthetics, or specifically in the aesthetics, I would like to talk about the dramaturgy. So we all know that Bharat Muni has been a first dramaturgist produced by India, and he is known for his work on dramaturgy. We call that the Natya Shastra. So Natya Shastra is the first text on the dramaturgy in which one of the dimension uh, that Bharat Muni talks about is the rasa theory, which is obviously a theory related to the aesthetics. And he talks about the different rasas, 8 kinds of rasas he's talking about, and what kind of bhavs they are producing once the human beings are experiencing. Now, let me quote this example. Say, for example, Bharat Muni talks about the 8 kinds of rasas. I will give you one example so that to make you understand this, the discourse of ras. Let's imagine uh, a scene of a movie where a sister of the hero is getting married, and everyone is uh, decorating her with new clothes or jewelry or lot of things. So they are doing it. They're doing the shringar of uh, that lady. So the feel which comes, or the bhav which comes after looking up that uh, bride, is that of the shringar, because she is getting decorated. So this is the first ras which the Bharat Muni talks about. That's the shringara ras. Now, second ras he talks about that when she is getting decorated and the entire environment is very happy in the family, so everybody is happy. So they feel another kind of bhav or the ras, which the Bharat Muni talks as a hasya ras. That's the second ras. So first is the shringara ras, and the second is the hasya ras. Now, third ras which Bharat Muni talks about is that suddenly, if we make an example that a villain in the movie comes and he elopes the bride, so hero comes to know about it. It creates anger in hero. So this kind of the anger of ras, Bharat Muni says it is a Raudra ras. Similarly, once he's in a Rudra ras, he now wants to get rid of the heroine from the clutches of the villain. So he goes there to fight, but he is being caught. So when he is being caught, so he is in another kind of ras, or the state which he calls as a bibhatsa ras, because he's not able to understand the situation. Then suddenly monkey comes, he opens his mouth, and then he fights, which Bharat Muni calls as a Veer ras. And this is how Bharat Muni talks about the 8 kinds of rasas, which is Shringahar ras, Hasya ras, Rudra ras. Then he fights, he calls that Veer ras. So on and so forth, or Bibhatsa ras. Then in this discourse, one of the scholars from Kashmir who lived in the 9th century Kashmir, called as Anandavardhana, he adds to this discourse a critical question that if people are feeling like a hasya ras, or once the hero defeats the villain, audience get happy and they feel like Veer ras, like they feel that state. But where from this hasya ras emerged, and where from this Rudra ras emerged? So Anandavardhana was a 9th century aesthetician from Kashmir who says that all these rasas, be it the Shringahara ras or be it the Veer ras, they emerge from a particular ras and they get dissolved in a particular ras, which he says that is the Shanta ras. So the 9th ras or the Shanta ras in the existing discourse of Bharat Muni's rasa theory has been added by the Anandavardhana during the Utpala Kashmir. And Abhinavagupta, famous versatile genius of Kashmir, who was aesthetician, grammarian, philosopher, literary critic, so he writes a commentary on the Bharat Muni's text called Abhinava Bharati. And throughout the Western universities, the scholars are of the opinion that we will not be able to do justice in teaching the Bharat Muni's Natya Shastra unless and until we will not teach it in comparison with the Abhinava Bharati of Abhinavagupta, because that is what makes its discourse very easy for audience. That's a very important thing. And This is the contribution in the field of aesthetics from the Kashmir. Similarly, in the contemporary times, when we people often get inspired from the Western models or Western perspectives, because the entire post-colonial discourse has been around, which they say as a decolonialization of mind. There are the opinion like Homike Baba, Frantz Fanon, Gayatri Chand Spivak, and others. There are the opinion these post-colonial theorists. I am using that post-colonial term without the hyphen, because when we in academics we use post-colonialism with hyphen. That means a time period which came after colonialism. But when in the academic writing we use the term post-colonial or post-colonialism or post-coloniality without the hyphen, that's a theory or a method which actually tries to study the impact of colonialism on those regions, especially cultural impact, which were once under colonialism. So the post-colonial theorist, the post-colonial one which is without the hyphen, like Homike Baba, Frantz Fanon, and others, they are of the opinion that we are out of colonialism now, but still mentally we are under colonialism, because we still aspire to get PhD in Oxford. We still aspire to go to have a like burger or like pizza, which is all the modern, which is all the Western importation. So this entire post-colonial theory tells us that there is a need of the decolonialization of mind, that we need to decolonialize our psyche, our mind, from that impact of colonialism which is still there. Now, when in the contemporary times we are being highly inspired by the Western philosophy, aesthetics, or whatever the scholarship they are doing, let's talk about the philosophy where we highly aspire to get ourselves acquainted with the postmodernism, Marxism, or Hegelian philosophy, or like post-structuralist tradition. And we feel honored to read the Marx, or Ferdinand de Saussure or Jacques Derrida and other philosophers. But Kashmir has been a place, even in up to recent times, which has inspired the Western scholars to come to Kashmir and to learn the philosophy of Kashmir Shaivism. So, one of the most important contribution from the region of Kashmir when it comes to the intellectual history of the space is the emergence of a particular religio-philosophical tradition, which we erroneously called Kashmir Shaivism, because this Kashmir Shaivism is a modern name given to it by a famous Bengali scholar, Jagdish Chandra Chatterjee, but rather in its different textual tradition, it has a various names. Like sometimes we call it as a Trikshaiva tradition. That tradition which expresses its theology, philosophy, ontology in the triads, because in Sanskrit Trik means triad. Or another name is a Rasa Sampradaya, or the mysterious philosophy. Some people used to call it like with different names, and the most important name which we often use is called as a Pratyabhigya Darshana, or in the context of the philosophy. Pratyabhigya Darshan means the philosophy of recognition. What is to be recognized? It's the God's nature within which needs to be recognized. Now the question is that since most of the people have heard about its philosophy or theology, but what is that historical milieu which created the avenues for the emergence of such an intellectual dialogue? So before I'll go to milieu, I'll just briefly introduce what this Kashmir Shaivism or Pratyabhigya Darshan or Rahasya Sampradaya, this tradition is all about. Quickly, I'll not deal, because already my teacher Zafar Sahib has already last time talked about this thing, and we might have heard a lot of times about its philosophy. So Kashmir Shaivism or Trika Shaivism or Pratyabhigya Darshan or Rahasya Sampradaya is a religious philosophical tradition which emerged in early medieval Kashmir, 9th century AD. When according to tradition, Shiv Sutras, which are 77 in number, were revealed to Acharya Vasugupta in a place in Srinagar called as a Mahadev mountain, which is just besides that of Dachigam Park if you go there. And that's that Shankar Pal on which these sutras were revealed, that is still there, though the sutras are not there. So people can go there. It is The way is in between the Dachigam part. So once this tradition got started, then it has been developed by the other scholars like Somananda, who wrote its first philosophical text, Shivadrishti. And then the proper philosophical tradition has been further developed by Utpala Deva. And it is the name of the text of the Utpala Deva that this tradition became to be called as a Pratyabhigya Darshan. So he wrote a text called Ishvara Pratyabhigya Karika. Karikas on the recognition of the Ishvara or the Lord. And then the other people developed it like Abhinava Gupta. Abhinava Gupta wrote two commentaries on the philosophical text of Utpala Deva. One is Ishvara Pratyabhigya Karika, Ishvara Pratyabhigya Vimarshini, and another is Vivritti Vimarshini. Then he wrote a very important text on the same that's called Tantra Loka, which is not only about the philosophy. He talks about the rituals, he talks about the philosophy, he talks about the theology. So what I mean to say, the best part which I liked about the Abhinava Gupta's Tantra Loka is that when he is actually trying to develop an argument with regard to the philosophy of Kashmir Shaivism. So once he is developing the arguments to convey what is the philosophy of Kashmir Shaivism, he gives a reference from different tantra. Just like, for example, we are nowadays writing a research paper. If we are writing a research like a 2 lines, 3 lines, we have to give a reference to where from this idea has come up. Otherwise, it will be a like unethical thing. So same is the case with Abhinava Gupta. When he talks about the non-dual nature of this philosophy or God, one who is beyond understanding, you will find him quoting the Vijnana Bhairavaha Tantra. That's one of the important tantra which Kashmir Shaivism believes in. Similarly, sometime when he developed his argument, he used to take reference from the Rudrayamala Tantra. Similarly, he takes reference from the Matanga and other philosophical these tantric texts. So then after the Shemaraja, he developed its like philosophical side as well. He wrote a 20 verse based text called the Pratyabhigya Hridayam. Then in the 14th century, the same tradition was being preached in the vernacular Kashmiri by Lal Ded when we make the analysis of her works. Now the thing is, what this Kashmir Shaivism wants from us? What is its crux? Then I'll come to its historical milieu. Kashmir Shaivism says that the entire cosmos and or whatever exists in the universe or universes and God or ultimate reality, they are fundamentally one reality. So God, you call him Shiv, Paramashiv, Sadashiv, Ishwar, or you call him Allah, or you call him whatever you want to call him as per your nomenclatures. So God and the entire universe, whatever exists, are fundamentally one. That means you, me, everyone, we are all like one with the God. And whatever exists in this universe, it is not beyond or outside the body of the Shiva. It is within his own self. Now the question emerges that if everything is one, if everything is non-dual, then why is Haroon? Why is Dr. Gargi? Why is Professor Zafar Sa? Why not we or God? So Kashmir Shaivism tells us that we are one with the reality, ultimate reality, but there are certain limitations which had created a delusion that we are not one. And Kashmir Shaivism talks about actually the 6 coverings or Shat Kanchukas. There's a Niyati, Kala, Kal, Vidya, Rag, and Maya. So Niyati means the limitation of the covering of space. Where I am sitting right now in Delhi in my own flat, I am not simultaneously sitting in West Bengal, but God is everywhere. So this limitation is applied only to us. So this is a limitation of space. Kala, I know a particular art, but God knows everything. Then Kal is a time. So Kal is something like we live in 21st century right now, but we were not there in the 15th century. So this limitation is not applied to God. So Niyati, Kala, Kal, Vidya, that's a knowledge. I know history only, or I might be knowing bit of Kashmir Shaivism, but God knows everything. There's another limitation. Niyati, Kala, Kal, Vidya, Rag, attachment. So attachment is something like which is very hard to get rid of. I'll give a quote of example of say for example, we all want no doubt we have a next world, or we still want to have a job, we still want our children to get adjust, we still want a good bungalow to live. We have a rag. Now I'll give a very specific example of Abhinava Gupta when he talks about this rag. So in Tantra Local or in other texts, Abhinava Gupta, because it was only Abhinava Gupta who could say this, Abhinava Gupta talks about passing away of her mother, or of his mother. So he says that I was highly attached to my mother called Vimlakala. And he says I was very sad about in my childhood when my mother passed away, but now I am happy that my mother passed away. Now, it is a very critical concern that somebody's mother is passing away and the person is like happy now. How is it possible? Well, what is this kind of perception? Then Abhinava Gupta says, he says that one of the obstacles to reach God is the rag, that is attachment. And the most important attachment of a person is the attachment with his or her mother. So the day I lost my mother, that became the day for me that I became free of all the bonds, and that's how I was able to know the ultimate reality. So Kashmir Shaivism says that these are certain limitations, and because of these limitations, they are on malas, like Anav Mal, Mai Mal, and Karam Mal. So Kashmir Shaivism says that you need to work on these malas, or you need to work to get rid of these limitations. And once you'll get rid of these limitations, you will come to know that the ultimate reality and you, or the entire universe and the ultimate reality, they are one. And once you realize, once you have pratyabhigyan of all this conceptual bearing, that is what Kashmir Shaivism says it is salvation. Now the question arises, if Kashmir Shaivism wants us to work on these malas, to get rid of these malas, or to get rid of these Shatkanchukas, the 6 limitations, then what is the method? Then what is the way forward? What do we have to do as a sadhaka or a common follower? Kashmir Shaivism says that self-effort is important. Self-effort is important. Let's say, for example, praying to God, recalling Him for salvation, or doing some like practices or worship is okay. But one will not be able to realize the God unless and until there will be the grace of God on that person. It is only to able to realize God when God wants you to realize Him or her, or to keep it gender neutral. Now, I'll just give you one example which is very important. Uttapala Deva, as I told you, he was a very renowned philosopher who wrote the Ishvara Pratyabhigyakarika. Such a big philosopher at the very outset clearly writes that somehow I realized God. He is not saying I realized God because of my jnana or because of my kriya. He says somehow because of his grace I realized God. Now, 14th century saint poetess of Kashmir, Lalda, my teacher Zafar Sahib was talking about last time, she talks about the same divine grace. Now, Lalda was spiritually so ahead that we can't imagine the spiritual depth of the Lalda. Even we have a Nundrishi as a poet in Kashmir and Lalda. But once we are making comparison between the poetry of Lalda and Nundrishi, I feel like I might be wrong, that Lalda's poetry is more philosophical. It has more depth as compared to the Nundrishi. Now, such a spiritually loaded lady who was like all time in the remembrance of God, he herself acknowledges that I was not able to realize God without His divine grace. Her one of the walk says, "Ki latan hund maaz laryon watan, aki havam aki chubat." I lost the entire flesh of my feet to the roads while searching God. Latan hund maaz laryon watan, aki havam aki chubat. Yim ye bozan tim kon matan, lalivin shatan kunika. So Lala says ki I lost the flesh of my feet to roads while searching for God. But it was the one who showed me the path towards the one. That means it was he who opened the path for me. Yim ye bozan tim kon matan. Now, if I'm telling you guys this reality, Yimi bozan tim kon matan, lalivin shatan kunika. This is the crux of the hundreds of discourses. Despite being such a spiritually strong lady, whose vision, whose intellect, whose like sadhana has no comparison, still she says that if I realized God, it was because of his divine grace. Now, Kashmir Shaivism says that if self-effort is important, so you do self-effort, but don't be in this impression that once you will do puja and worship, you will realize God. That is not going to be happen, because ultimately it is the God who has to give you the divine grace, who has to make you realize who the ultimate reality is. So Kashmir says you start with like the three ways: Anava Upay, Shakto Upay, Shambhava Upay. But Kashmir says that once you follow these three paths, it is not necessary that you need to follow these three paths by anyhow. Sometimes God can make realization of his true nature to a being without following these paths. To Kashmir Shaivism says, no doubt there are three paths, but it is not necessary that a person will realize God through these three paths. But the thing is that God can express his divine grace to anybody and without following the path. And that path, Kashmir Shaivism says, called anupai, pathless path. So there is no path also. If God wishes, he can make you realize who the ultimate reality is without doing anything. So this is what Kashmir Shaivism tells us. Now the thing is that what was that milieu which actually gave birth to Kashmir Shaivism? Now the thing is that from the philosophical point of view, we see that in the 8th century or 9th century, when Kashmir Shaivism began to emerge, Kashmir has emerged at that time the center of Sanskrit learning, which we all know Kashmir was then called in 8th, 9th century as a Sharda Peeth, or the center of goddess of knowledge. And in this Sharda Peetha, the discussion and the dialogue or the samvad used to happen on the different aspects of the what we nowadays call Indian knowledge system, be it the religion, be it the philosophy, be it the aesthetics, because it wasn't only confined to religion and philosophy. As we know, Atri Gupta, who was a great grandfather of the Abhinava Gupta, was being brought by Lalit Aditya to Kashmir in 8th century. Abhinava Gupta writes in his Tantra Loka's 37th Ahinaka that he was being brought from Antarvedi to Kashmir to have discourses on rasa, not on religion. So he was being called or brought to Kashmir by Lalit Aditya to have discussion on the rasa or the theory of aesthetics. So Kashmir has emerged as a Sharda Peetha or the center of knowledge. And there used to be a philosophical discussions, not only about the Indic philosophy. Like Indic philosophies were there, like Sankhya, Yoga, Nyaya, Mimamsa or Vaisheshika, but also the Buddhist philosophies as well, be it the Shunyavad of Nagarjuna, be it the Vigyanvad of the Dharmakirti, because one of the major contestations from the philosophical perspective of Kashmir Shaivism is with the Vigyanvad Buddhism. Because Somananda Shivadrishti or Utpala Devaji's Ishvara Pratyabhikya Karega fundamentally puts up the critique towards the Vigyanvad Buddhism on the discourse of consciousness. So they have already this philosophical dialogue or this contestation going there. So it was not only the Indic philosophies, rather we have some references, if not concrete. There is one scholar whose name is Louis Massignon. He's a French philosopher who has written a text on the Mansur al-Hallaj, Hussein ibn Mansur al-Hallaj. In that text, he says that Mansur, who was known for his take an al-Haq, I am the truth, I am the God, came to Kashmir to know about their doctrinal positions. And also, in the Kashmir at that time, there used to be discussions on the Torah. There used to be the discussion on Bible. There used to be discussions on Quran. So Kashmir was an intellectually very rich space. So after a lot of samvads or constructive dialogues, be it with the Shankara's Advaita Vedanta, or be it with the other philosophical traditions from Indian philosophies or outside, so Kashmiri scholars, after taking the insights from many of these philosophical dialogues, they begin to canonize and theorize a particular philosophical tradition that we call as a Kashmir Shaivism. Now, how can we see that the Kashmir Shaivism was the outcome of a lot of philosophies, or there were contributions of other aspects as well? For example, Kashmir Shaivism preaches the Advaita philosophy, the Advait, which was already in the Indic philosophical discourse via Shankaracharya. But Kashmir Shaivism accepted this broader concept, but it has its own interpretation while explaining what this Advait concept is all about, and it differs from the Shankara's Advait. But on the other side, if we talk about the Vashishta Advait of Ramanujaji, Kashmir Shaivism is also inspired by that. If we talk about the Shuddha Advait of Vallabhbhai Acharya, that has also influence on Kashmir Shaivist philosophy. If on the one side Kashmir Shaivism is expressing dissent with the Vigyanavad Buddhism, but on the other side it takes its metaphysical foundations from the Shunyavad Buddhism of Nagarjuna. If Kashmir Shaivism believes that ultimate reality is Shiva or Paramashiva or Sadashiva, this Shaivite discourse, which considered Shiva as the ultimate reality, was already in the discourse of Shaivism in Indic mainland. So what I mean to say is that, yeah, similarly, Abhinavagupta, what I feel like reading the Abhinavagupta is that since he come from the Brahmanical class, his great grandfathers has been the Brahmans, and he was a Brahmanical by faith. He is a person who actually tries to bridge the gap between the Vedic and the Tantric tradition while writing the Tantra Loka. Because he actually tried to synthesize, since Kashmir Shaivism is Agamic or Tantric, it doesn't accept Vedas as supreme authority. But Abhinavagupta is the one who actually tries to bridge the gap between and create a harmony between the Agamic and the Nigamic tradition Tantra Loka. So if Kashmir Shaivism was, so what he does, he created the philosophy of Kashmir Shaivism in a way which made Kashmir Shaivism no doubt non-Vedic but not anti-Vedic. So similarly, then we have a Laldet who preached this vernacular, this Kashmir Shaivist philosophy in a vernacular Kashmiri language, and there are a lot of works which express this thing. I'll quote 2-3 works. When Kashmir Shaivism says that ultimate reality and the entire universe, they are one, they are not two different entities. As the first sutra of Shiv Sutra talks about the Chaitanyam Atma, that Chaitanya or the consciousness is the soul of everything. This is the same concept that Laldet preached in Vak, ki yutba gayas tate o sui, tate juthum mool sui, kanas chinit wool sui, sui hai sui te begu sui. कि जहां भी मैं गई मैंने उसी को पाया. इवन कि जब हमारे कानों में बालियां लगी होती है लंबे वाले, जब हमारे ओल्ड एज में ये कान कट जाते हैं, तो उनके बीच की जो गैप है उनमें भी मैंने गॉड को ही देखा है. When Kashmir Shaivism talks about realizing God within one's own self, so Laldet says ki Goran Vonnam Kuni Vatsun, Neparai Dopanam Andar Atsun. My guru gave me only one Guru Shabdata. He said, Lalla, if you really want to find a God, then try to move within from without. Ki Goran Vonnam Kuni Vatsun, Neparai Dopanam Andar Atsun. Sui me lali hut vaaktai vatsun, Sui me lali go vaaktai vatsun, Tawai Miut Nangai Natsun. So once I applied the suggestion of my guru, it created chaos in me, and I began to wander in a naked reality. Now the thing is that which I just want to conclude on, then we might have some couple of questions, that Kashmir Shaivism, if emerged in the 9th century AD, then was being gradually developed by the different philosophers till the 14th century. But the problem is that Kashmir Shaivism could not become a mass tradition in Kashmir. Though Laldet tried to put up this tradition in a very vernacular language, but it couldn't had the grip of or the mass of Kashmir. There were many reasons. One was, the first was a political reason. The political class of at that time did not patronize the Kashmir Shaivism, rather they patronized the Brahmanical Vaishnavism and Shaivism, because most of the people at that time were following the Brahmanical Vaishnavism, Shaivism or Shaktism. So when the people were following that, ruling class supplied the patronage in order to create a manufacturing concept. To win the hearts of people, they patronized support to that religious tradition which were being followed by the common people in order to consolidate their rule. That's the one thing. Second is, which is very much important, Kashmir Shaivism, to my understanding, till before the Laltat, has been more an intellectual exercise. It was highly confined to the intellectual circles at that time. Only maybe the elite people could have afforded to attend the lectures of Abhinavagupta, or the people with a privilege would have been able to come and join, and common people were not ready to have that. Reason being, firstly, it was a difficult philosophy. That's why it was called rasa sampradaya. Second thing was that philosophy in its essence is very complex. So third thing is that why I call it it might have been confined to elites. I just want to give you one description about the Abhinavagupta, where I just want to conclude. Please give me a minute to talk about it. See that how elitist tradition it has been. Wait, I'll just, please give me 1 second. So this is what I am going to talk about, how it has been confined, how it was an intellectual exercise. It couldn't become a mass tradition because of political reasons, because of linguistic reasons, because of philosophical reasons, which were. And third thing, it was something a very, nowadays it is something, जैसे कुछ लोग academics में जिनको अभी access है, they are only able to know about the like narrative discourses. आम रेडी वाला, आम दुकानदार, who will tell him the democracy, who will tell him what is the socialism, who will tell him what is the Marxism? No one. So now let me give you one example how it was an elite tradition at that time. Now, Abhinavagupta has a very important disciple. His name is Madhuraja. He was from South India. Madhuraja has written a text on kind of biography or in favor of Abhinavagupta that's called Gurunatha Parmasar. Now he gives a description about the discourses of Abhinavagupta when he used to do with the students and what kind of life of Abhinavagupta was. Now let me read something for you where I will conclude then. So Madhuraja says, my glorious God Dakshinamurti in the form of Abhinava. So he calls Abhinava as a god, Dakshinamurti. Dakshinamurti is another name of Shiva. So he refers that Abhinavagupta was not less than a Dakshinamurti or Shiva. My glorious god Dakshinamurti in the form of Abhinava, who is an incarnation of Shrikant. Shrikant is another name of the Shiva, and has come to Kashmir out of deep compassion. So he says, my Lord Dakshinamurti, who is also Shrikant, that is Abhinavagupta. So Abhinavagupta Shiva, he has come to Kashmir out of compassion in order to protect people. Now further, he gives description. His eyes are rolling with spiritual bliss. So the eyes of Abhinavagupta were rolling with spiritual bliss, where the spiritual bliss was getting reflected from his eyes. The center of his forehead is clearly marked with the 3 lines made with ashes. So इसके माथे पे 3 लाइनें थी और वो 3 लाइनें ashes से बनी थी. The center of his forehead is clearly marked with 3 lines made with ashes. His ears look beautiful with रुद्राक्ष, और उनके कान बहुत ही खूबसूरत थे रुद्राक्ष पहन के. His luxuriant hair is tied with a garland of flowers, और जो उनके बाल थे अभिनवगुप्त के बंधे हुए थे और उनके ऊपर फूल लगे हुए थे. His beard is long, his body is rosy. He says that Abhinavagupta's beard is long and his body is rosy. He's actually telling us that the situation of Abhinavagupta in which he used to deliver his lecture, and what kind of personality, how rich and aesthetic life of Abhinavagupta was, which was not like affordable for a common person. So he further says his neck was black because of its being besmeared with paste of camphor, musk, sandal and saffron. जो उनका नेक था उस पे काफूर लगा होता था, उस पे सैफरॉन लगा होता था, उस पे मस्क लगा होता था और उस पे सैंडल लगा होता था. इतनी खुशबू, इतनी चीजें. His long sacred thread, यज्ञोपवीत, जो ब्राह्मण्स जो अपना यज्ञोपवीत पहनते हैं, is left loose, बाएं साइड से लेफ्ट लूज था अभिनवगुप्त का. He dressed in silk cloth, और जो अभिनवगुप्त जी का ड्रेस जो होता था, he used to wear the silk cloth, not the common clothes. Asha, he is dressed in silk cloth, white like the rays of moon, and is sitting in the yogic posture called Veer. So after wearing this white silk garment, he used to sit in a position of yoga called as a veer. Then he further says, when he used to sit in the position of veer on a soft cushion, he was sitting after wearing a silk cloth of white color. He was sitting on a cushion over a throne, और जो वो cushion था वो throne पे था, made of gold. So the throne on which Abhinav Gupta had a cushion and he used to sit and deliver lectures, that throne was made of gold. And there was a cushion very soft and wearing a silken clothes. So the throne was made of gold. Then he further says that this throne was placed in a hall. And that hall was being decorated with a lot of paintings, lot of pearls. So he is sitting on a golden throne, wearing a silk clothes, and that throne is placed in a large hall, which is being decorated, or that looks aesthetically nice because of the lot of paintings and the pearls. And that hall is being made within the garden of grapes. और जो वो hall था वो अंगूर के बाग में था. And on the other side, he says that there were a lot of students who were noting what Abhinav Gupta delivers. He refers one student as Shemaraj. And there were two women behind the Abhinav Guptas who were with those bowls in which there was a water which was being distilled from the grain. So Abhinav Gupta, a philosopher, wearing a silken cloth, sitting on a couch on a throne which is made of gold, and that golden throne is in a hall which is made of pearls and made of paintings, and that hall is within the space of what we call as a garden of grapes. And on the one side, students are all noting Abhinav Gupta is teaching, and around the girls are there who are waiting with some water or some fruits. Even Madhuraja writes that some girls were waiting with a beetle or pan, so that when Abhinav Gupta tells us, so we'll offer him a pan. So at that time, because of the political reasons, because of the linguistic reasons, and because of its has been a philosophical reason, which was obviously philosophy is a Shah Rukh Khan is very known for saying a quote that first get rich, then become a philosopher. So a poor can't become a philosopher. So getting engaged into such dialogue obviously needs some privilege. One who is stable financially and who could attend these then. So because of all these reasons, Kashmir Shaivism could not become the mass tradition in Kashmir. But when Lal Ded preached the Kashmir Shaivism, she has a differences with the Abhinav Gupta's the interpretation of Shaivism on two lines. One is that Abhinav Gupta Shiva has some form because he refers Shiva with various names, but Lal Ded's Shiva is Nirguna. So he has no form. That is one difference. Second thing, in Abhinav Gupta's interpretation or the version of Kashmir Shaivism, there is a bit scope to the rituals, but Lal Ded's Shaivism is ritual free, and it was a Lal Ded's Shaivism which was ritual free, which was like idol free. And when she began to preach, it was the same time when Islam as a Central Asian Sufi has come and they were spreading the message of Islam. And this kind of discourse which the Lal Ded has preached gave an open ground to Central Asian Sufis or the local then indigenous Sufis to preach the message of Islam. And it is how through the Lal Ded that we see that Buddhist, Hindu, and then Islamic traditions then through the non-duality and other rishis emerged, and Kashmir was able to create what we call a new kind of Sufi tradition or mystical tradition, that is the rishis. So rishi tradition, which was already in the Indic discourse, is, we all know it's a mystical tradition in Hinduism, but what Nundraj does is he Islamized that tradition. So the Islamized version of rishi tradition was somewhat which was the outcome of that dialogue which has already happened between the Hindu, Buddhist, and Islamic intellectual traditions. And that's why theologically these rishis were Muslims, but the way they lived, they did not marry, which is un-Islamic. They did not subscribe to the non-veg, which is like Islam tells us you have to take it. Actually, they didn't marry. There's one prophetic tradition that those who do not marry are not out of me. Similarly, those spaces, religious spaces like caves in which the rishis initially worshipped, once they became Muslims, where they, in those caves where they were doing puja, now they were offering namaz in the same caves. So it was because of these rishis that Kashmir was able to see the fusion of different religions, traditions, and it were these rishis who represented the best synthesis of this dialogue. And it is because of their efforts that Kashmir was able to create a new culture that in the academic language we call composite culture, syncretic culture, or some other term we can use. And that has been the identity of the Kashmir throughout the centuries, and that has been the ethos which has always saved, or which has always helped Kashmiris to live as a one entity despite of a lot of challenge. And the need of hour is that to revive or to work on that syncretic culture which was being taught us by the Nundaresh, Laldev, or other Sufis and mystics. And that's how we can see that Kashmir will be able to be politically, economically, socially stable. Because Kalhana in his Raj Tarangni, in the first Tarang, clearly says is that there is no place available in the Kashmir, even that of the sesame grain, which is not without the tirth. Thus, Kashmir can be, and these tirthas are acting as a defensive wall to Kashmir. They are protecting the Kashmir. Thus, Kashmir can be conquered by the spirit of love, not by the might of soldiers. So, this is how we need to look out this thing. Thank you so much.